And AI is never going to be empathetic, right? It's never going to also understand the complexities of human nature, or why, it can be hard sometimes to align stakeholders. AI machines aren't going to be able to do that. So really that's going to be designers, researchers, still conducting human-centered design, still going out, reaching out to users, hearing them out. I think that's why that part of it will never go away. It will just change a little bit, right?
Welcome to Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting, where we bring you candid conversations and stories with the thinkers, doers, and builders behind some of the most successful digital products and experiences in the world, from concept to execution.
Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast. I'm Nathan Isaacs, Principal Content Marketing Manager at UserTesting. And our guest today is Sara Fortier. Sara is the founder and CEO of Outwitly, a woman-owned UX and service design talent solutions business known for helping private and public organizations scale design initiatives and drive growth through empathy and human insight. Sara is also a Silicon Valley veteran who has led design strategy for Fortune 100 companies, including Apple, AT&T, and Microsoft. Her debut book, Design Research Mastery, is launching in Europe and the UK in November. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sara, can you take us back a bit and share what sparked your journey into human-centered design and what's kept you so passionate about it all these years?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think there's always the schooling part. So, I went to school and I did a bachelor's of industrial design, which is actually design of 3D products. Like vacuum cleaners and cars, and that was cool. But it wasn't quite the right thing. I couldn't see myself sketching and building models for the rest of my life. And then I did a master's because I graduated in the recession. And so I went back to school because I was like, I don't know what to do. There's no jobs. And I did a master's of design. And that was much more of the sort of theoretical application of design to business problems and looking more at the end-to-end customer experience. And that's also where I discovered UX design, user experience design. And so that, really was sort of the formal love of human-centered design and how I came into the industry. But when I also think back to long ago, I definitely had a dad who used to complain endlessly about bad experiences. If he had to call Rogers or the telephone company and talk to many different call center representatives, or they would say one thing here and then another thing here. He'd be repeating himself. Or if we'd go to the airport, he would just complain endlessly about how it was such a bad experience. And so I realized that my life calling has become about making better experiences. And I'm sure my dad had a role to play there. But so that's kind of how I came into human-centered design. And then, what kind of keeps me passionate about it, I think, is just that it's so wonderful, trying to solve problems and what the challenges that people have with the products and services that they use. It never gets boring. There's always a new challenge. There's always something else to figure out. And then ultimately you're having this great impact on people's lives. And I'm very optimistic. And I think the designers can change the world. And so that part is the part that I love the most, is just, uncovering the problems and then figuring out how to solve them and getting everyone else excited about it along the way.
I think the complaining might be the role of all dads out there. I'm really good at that. Anyway, I for people who don't know, can you describe what is human-centered design?
Yeah. So human-centered design is really a methodology or process that is about how to solve problems related mostly to products and services. So products often in the realm of digital products like apps and, websites, portals, that kind of thing. Services could be, going to get your driver's license renewed or something. And so human-centered design just puts people at the center of that, which means that you're talking to them, you're interviewing them, you're trying to understand their challenges, their motivations, what's bothering them about whatever the experience is. And so you do that research, and then you kind of define the problem a little bit better than what it was when you initially kind of went into it. And then you make sense of all the data and define the problem, and then you go into the fun kind of design and recreating of whatever the solution is. And that's where the prototyping and testing comes in. So where user testing would come into that process.
You've built a leading UX service design staffing business, worked with giants like Apple and Microsoft, and helped shape hundreds of design teams. With that background in mind, can you tell us why human-centered design is more essential than ever in today's AI-powered world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that AI is really great, as we know, for making things faster, for the mechanics of different processes and optimizing stuff. But if we want to make great products and services, which we still want to in an AI powered world, they have to meet the needs of the users and the people that interact with those products and services. And AI is never going to be empathetic, right? It's never going to also understand the complexities of human nature, or why it can be hard sometimes to align stakeholders. AI machines aren't going to be able to do that. So really, that's going to be designers, researchers, still conducting human-centered design, still going out, reaching out to users, hearing them out. I think that's why that part of it will never go away. It will just change a little bit, right? So it's going to be maybe less of the recruiting, doing that hands-on recruiting or hands-on data analysis, although it's still not great there, but it will get better. So I think it's the empathy and the complexity piece. And then I also, AI is really objective driven, right? So it has a task and it goes after the objective that you give it. But sometimes you don't know what the objectives are. And so that's why you need to do research. You need to figure out what's bothering people. What are they frustrated by? And human-centered design and discovery research really allows you to explore that and to come up with more innovative opportunities. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, I was just having a conversation earlier with another Canadian, Ross Simmons, who's a big time marketer up there. And I think you both have answered this question. There were two different questions, but kind of the same.
Yeah.
And in the sense of, well, and what he says, like, AI is really going to allow you the time to do that sort of discovery, right?
Yeah.
We're only going to have better products, better processes, better whatever, if we can explore and understand what our audiences really need. And AI is going to allow us the time to do all the stuff that kind of gets in the way of doing all that, right?
Yeah.
Go out and synthesize, 2000 survey questions and find
Yeah.
out, what the trends were so that you can ask good follow-up questions later on, or help you find an audience globally to go out and, interview rather than
Yeah.
spending 3 weeks trying to set up an interview, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, totally. And in our world, like stuff that takes a really long time, that makes discovery research, which is one of the harder things to pitch to stakeholders because it's something that could take 6 months, right? But that's because, you're recruiting users, and that was used to be, and not so much anymore, but used to be super manual, like all the scheduling, the scheduling backups and reaching out to people, finding pools of people to connect with. That used to take a really long time. And then the setting up the research plan and the interview protocol and all of these different steps that were a part of the research process can be now much faster because of the AI, but you still have a human there interviewing another human and making that connection and drawing the nuances, like from within, let's say, the interview. The interviewer can ebb and flow and probe deeper and ask why, and then they get out of that a bunch of data that then now AI can also make them faster at analyzing that, right? So yeah, I think it's a tool, and it's going to make us faster and better. It'll be easier for us to convince stakeholders to do research because they want to spend as much time there. So I think it's a really great thing, but then also just being mindful not to lose the fact that we still need users. Like this idea of synthetic users is not great, and so where do we draw the line there? Yeah,
Well, I think we'll talk about that more in a bit. The you spoke at Can UX about stakeholder buying. You were just speaking about
yeah.
getting buy-in. How do you convince skeptics that human-centered design isn't just a nice to have?
Yeah, and it's funny earlier in my career and kind of before I understood, let's say, the ways of the world, I thought that I could just talk about process and deliverables and these pretty things that we make like customer journey maps and personas and wireframes and I thought that that would be enough to get people excited. And obviously, I realized that that's not what stakeholders care about at all. They care about results. And so, I started to really kind of listen to more about how do they talk? What are the words that they use? I dropped a lot of the jargon that I would use. And when you're coming up in design, it's almost part of your training is to talk like that, to make yourself sound like an expert. But then you get into the real world where people don't know what design is or research is, and they don't care. They just sort of want to know, can you make it so there's less customer churn? So I think I've learned now, how to speak more like stakeholders so that they start listening and they resonate. But also, it's really about identifying the pain. So anytime you're selling something, and that's like I'm a business owner, right? So I have to do the sales piece too. But it's just about trying to hear them out and ask them questions enough so you can really get to the core of the pain of the problem that they're having and then give them a solution. And that solution could be, did you know that if we talk to your users, we might be able to uncover like where they're dropping off and why that's happening? And then we could fix it with, great design. And then you get them more excited about it and bought in. So I think there's this one piece of like aligning your language and also speaking to them in a way that resonates, but then listening to them, which is great. All researchers should be great listeners anyway. And then I think there's another part of it, which is this idea of being trustworthy and building trust, which doesn't come overnight, right? So, I mean, sometimes there has to be, if you're like an in-house designer, in-house researcher, and you're trying to convince stakeholders, it's best if you actually start from, what's in it for them? How can I show them value? How can I build this trust with them so that when I do make a recommendation, they're listening to me? Because if you think your friend recommends something to you, well, you're going to listen to them because you trust them, right? Maybe in this one area you trust them, whatever, they're recommending a wine to you and they're a wine connoisseur, right? So it's sort of about how do you build that trust with your stakeholders? And it can be as simple as like being organized, being responsive, starting with small projects and building that over time. And then eventually, when you come to them and you say, I really think that we should dig in here and we should, do a research project, following the human-centered methodology, they're more inclined to listen to you and actually give you a shot at it. And then when you're given the shot, to do a really, really good job and not squander the opportunity. Because I think that can be another piece of it is like, you're not often given the chance sometimes to do the discovery research, but if you don't do a good job when it's given to you, then you might not get the chance again.
Yeah, it's well, I think doing that sort of discovery research, you often find many things.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if you have this. I have a problem. When I start working on organizing my garage, I find 8 other projects that I
Yes.
need to kind of get started on.
Yes.
And then I lose my focus and, I'm not, and at the end of the weekend, my wife says, what did you do? Right. You just
Yeah.
made more of a mess, but
Yeah.
instead keep focused on the one thing you
Yes.
needed to do, deliver that, and then come back and say, if you're ready to move forward, we have these
Yeah.
other 3 projects we can kind of dig
Yeah.
deeper
I think,
into.
yeah, that's such a great point because you are right. You do uncover so much stuff. And then sometimes you can fall in love with the stuff. you're like, oh my God, we could do so much. We could fix this here. All of this is coming out. I've got new ideas, and, we're creative people. And so our brains are just lit up with it. And then your stakeholders are there listening, like, what's the point? Get to the point. I don't care about all this other stuff. This isn't what the project was about. So I think it's combining this business acumen and like really understanding what the business needs are and making sure that what you're doing is aligned to the business needs so that your stakeholders are there being like, they did listen to me. And look, they uncovered the exact thing that I needed them to uncover. And great, there's future research and future projects that we can have that are at the end, as an appendix or something. So I think keeping that focus is, as you say, very important too.
Yeah. Yeah. And just prioritize that addendum stuff, right? And
Yeah.
if you're gonna do more, here's what you can do, and here's how we prioritize it along the business needs, right? The
Yes.
highest return on that investment for the
Yeah.
quickest time to see value for anything you
Yeah,
want to do,
exactly. And
right?
we would often do, like a validation workshop with users, towards the end, once we've come up with all the opportunities, and you kind of workshop it with them to make that priority list. And you can bring your stakeholders in there so they're really bought in. And you pull out, as you say, the highest priority items as part of that go into, your report or whatever your next steps are.
We talked briefly about synthetic users, and when you're talking about synthetic users, or we like to use the language of AI simulated users, or something like that. And there are nuances there.
Yeah.
Like what do you see are the advantages or disadvantages? How should we approach? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and to be fair, I haven't used like too many of them. I've more kind of researched and seen what's out there, but I where I feel like they could be very useful is if you have done quite a bit of research already, like on the discovery side, and you have actually talked to real people, you've gotten that data, and you feed, the synthetic users with that data, and then you probe it with questions, and how would that sort of synthetic user, who's almost a persona, made up of all of this real qualitative data. So not just the quantitative data that comes from social media posts and reviews and things like that, but actually where there's qualitative data that fed the synthetic user, then I think that can be really powerful because it can speed things up. And as you've got a small bite-sized thing about, a product feature and you want some feedback on, then I think there's a lot of power there. And also, I know, and this can be controversial, but researchers might have a big problem with that, right? Because it's like coming for their jobs and stuff. But actually, that frees them up to do the really juicy, creative kind of discovery research projects that everyone wants to do, versus the usability testing can sometimes get like monotonous because you're doing it over and over again. You're just testing small features, small changes. So I think synthetic users have a lot of power there. And then, as you can probably imagine, what I'm going to say is like, you don't want to be using them when you haven't done all of that data or all of that research and gathered the qualitative data. So you don't want to be using them to explore ideas or higher level concepts or trying to ask them what their challenges are or things like that, right? So I think you feed it first with as much data as you can get.
Yeah, it goes back to the old adage, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
So if you're just using something find online, and you're like, oh, you imagine you are a marketer.
Yeah.
What are your five
Yeah.
pain points? And you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
going to get some random stuff that is generated somewhere else, and
Yeah.
it's been trained on somebody's blog post on that, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it still lies. I mean, I was just asking a question the other day, like, hey, could you help me with something? And it just fabricated an entire story. And I was like, of course, I'm reading it and I can see that it's a lie. But if you're asking it those questions about somebody else and how that other person might feel, like it can still lie to you.
Yeah. I use it in my work in podcasting, and I can just feed these interviews in there, and I can get the main points out of it and stuff like that. But
Great.
I've trained it on that one interview, and if you could do that with 10 interviews or
Yeah.
20 or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden you're creating a persona or synthetic
Yes.
user that it has some sort of knowledge about.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
I am not a researcher, so
But no, I
and
agree. I think that's the idea.
do not, follow my advice on anything, I think. The I'm wondering, what's one mistake you see organizations make when they over rely on AI tools, especially when it comes to human centered design?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what we're talking about is that they're just going straight to these tools that claim, "Hey, we'll make you some personas out of nothing," out of quantitative data, or which is the age-old argument that in my field we have all the time. It's sort of quantitative versus qualitative, and what's the difference? And we often get stakeholders asking us, "Well, how can I put any stock in what 20 people have said versus 2,000 people, right?" And we always talk about, well, it's really about, the quality of what they're saying, and, you get to their motivations and the deeper why. And then you bolster it with some quantitative data. So the two work well together, right? So I think AI has a lot of power on the quantitative side and can, pull a lot of data. It could analyze quantitative data probably better than it could qualitative data. So yeah, I think it's this idea of like, don't just rely on that. You also need the qualitative, real humans talking to real human data. And so not to rely too much on the synthetic users or these apps that say they'll create personas for you with no real research behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, or if it's too good to be true, then it probably is not true, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
The and going back to the conversations, what we've already said is like, use it where you can use it, find ways to, and challenge your research team, challenge your designers on, how can they use AI to speed up bits of their job that it should be helping speed up, right? And
Yeah.
so that, and then with that theoretical free time, the magical free time that we all seek, how would they use that, right? I can do, if I get an extra hour a week, I can do this or whatever
Yeah.
it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And another thing to think about is, so we know that it can help with recruiting, like I talked about. It can help with summarizing transcripts. It can help with theming, even part of your research planning and all of this, and even A/B testing. And it can help with so many different things, right? But then the parts where I would say, organizations should be careful is like, how high risk is the thing that they're testing or that they want information on? Like, how critical is that to the business? And if it's a higher risk, more critical piece to the business, then humans should be involved both on both sides. Like, you should talk to real users and you should have humans analyzing and researching and uncovering the insights and kind of making those connections to what the business needs. So yeah, I would say that's another thing to kind of look at, is how important is it to the business, the thing that you're studying.
Yeah, absolutely. I often, complain in my dad role, but also in my professional role, like if 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 this contact is worth, whatever your average selling price is, 10,000, 20,000, $100,000, why are you only spending 25 cents to try and get them?
Yeah.
Should
Yeah.
have somebody spend an extra hour to review that
Yeah.
AI generated RFP or whatever it might be, and
Yeah,
make sure that
exactly.
it's accurate. You know, anyway,
Same goes. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
The You've mentored so many emerging professionals throughout Whitley Academy. You have a soon to be published book on mastering design research. What's your advice for the next generation of designers who are trying to make sense of where they fit in an AI centric world?
Yeah. I think the obvious one is like, be AI literate and also work on your business acumen, because there is an exceeding pressure on UX teams to be able to prove the ROI of what they're doing, and that's not something that traditionally I would say UX teams are very good at. Given that they're staffed with a bunch of creative people who have never gone to business school, never, had we've always been kind of protected, I would say, because we're these creative unicorns that people find really fascinating because we can design something so beautiful. And so it would always be like, no, 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 don't bug the designers, you know. But now, that shield has come down, and we really do have to stand up for our work and the value of it. So I think the business acumen part is people need to they actually need to understand it and be able to talk about it. Because I think we'll sort of become more like architects, right? In terms of which are the tools that we're using, when to bring in AI, what is the overall process, and like where are we pulling the different levers of AI, let's say, in that, and also then bringing it together. So I think there's that piece. And then the other piece that I talk to my team about, and I talk to, any designers that I'm mentoring, is about soft skills. And we, for a really long time, focused on hard skills. Like, were you an excellent designer? Are the screens beautiful? Are the flows really easy to use? Like, are you really good? Do you know your research stuff, right? But now there's so much more that we need to have that. So the pressure's on, right? We need to have the good hard skills. Although AI is now going to take some of that pressure off, because it will get better at like actually designing screens and stuff like that. But there's the soft skill side, which is like, are you empathetic and emotionally intelligent? Can you have can you communicate with your stakeholders and really understand where they're coming from, and then present solutions, ways of doing things back to them? So this idea of stakeholder management is really important. I think, can you also be strategic? So bringing in that business acumen side to the insights and, what you're hearing from your users, and being able to combine those into something that's really valuable and really actionable for the business. And then also, are you a great storyteller, right? Like, we always have to be proving what our design decisions are. And when we have a research report and we're telling stakeholders about how the users are feeling, you have to be able to build a report, build a presentation in the way that is this immersive story, to bring your stakeholders along and make them get goosebumps and think, whoa, if I could change that, if I could do this, fix some broken experience, like how much better it would be. Like, you show them that vision through your storytelling. I think those are skills that are really important now, because again, AI is not going to be able to do that stuff. It might help you, right? It might help you with framing and phrasing and all of that, but how you connect to someone emotionally, and get them excited about a change, that's human.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such great advice. Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of human-centered design, and where do you hope to see your work and the industry evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm most excited about a service design. I think getting a bigger foothold in organizations, because as I said, like, the UX teams now are going to have to be more strategic, and that naturally lends itself to service design, which is really looking at the end to end customer experience, let's say, right? And UX being one piece of that, right? So how an app behaves or works is the UX part, but service design is sort of the broader end to end. So I think that will naturally start to have a bigger place, and it already is, and people are using that word more. So I think that's exciting. I'm excited also for I think for our industry to go through a bit of a change, and to, as I said, like, wake up and talk about the business needs and not just about how fun the research is. I think, we're kind of maybe in this state of flux right now, because AI is a bit scary. A lot of people are worried about their jobs. Companies are kind of going through hiring freezes where they're not sure if they're going to expand their UX team right now. And it's legitimately scary, like, you're worried about, am I going to be able to continue in this career? But I I'm optimistic, as I said at the beginning. And I feel like there's only going to be more interactions with technology because of AI. And so how are we going to get creative about being the people there that can act as this bridge between technology and humans? Like that's really human-centered design and UX design. That's what our role is. So there's just going to be more and more of that. But I think there we'll go through a bit of a change before we reach that point. And then for me, as someone who's growing a staffing business, I'm excited about kind of raising the bar for talent and outcomes and growing a really strong UX community, and building some connective tissue between design leaders who are hiring and also the people who are looking for jobs and opportunities.
Yeah. And going back, I think it really touches on all 3 points you were making there is that um, using the AI to kind of help you prioritize how you can quickly help the company, right? Don't
Yeah.
think about big projects, think about small projects, think
Yeah.
about bite-sized little improvements so that uh, your stakeholders can believe
Yeah.
in you, right?
Yes.
And give you the license to do more work.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like I talk about, small wins, especially if the maturity of the organization isn't fully there yet. It's like any opportunity you have to do a bit of research, bring in AI, show them that you are AI friendly, that you are thinking about how to optimize things. I even had, a client, of mine mention, I'm not sure how to measure AI and the impact it has on our productivity. And one thing that we did recently was we conducted an internal project with design leaders to understand their challenges and things like that. And the designer on it kind of measured her number of hours that she takes to usually do a project and how many hours it sort of saved her using AI. And then she was able to say, well, I probably saved it 40 hours in total, on this project because I used AI at different points. So if you can then bring to your higher ups, hey, like I saved 40 hours out of a 6 week project. Well, you just saved them like 1 week out of 6 weeks. That's a lot of money, right? But as designers and researchers, we're not thinking about that. And that's just going to show them like this person is adaptive, they are willing to learn, they've got a growth mindset, they're bringing value to the organization. Plus, you still get to do the good work and you'll get to do more of the interesting work that you like.
I think you got to be cautious, right? The nervous person in me is like, I showed my boss how I can save that 1 week, and now they've just added more,
Right.
right? So come to
That's
them
true.
and say, I saved you this 1 week, and with that time I did this,
Yes. Yeah.
and show them like I did this big discovery project
Yeah.
with this time, and we're able to now we'll be able to get 10x the return
Yes.
on that investment. Whereas
Yeah. I love
whereas
that.
before they would just say, well, create another podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know,
Oh, you could have done twice the number of projects in that
right.
time then or something. Yeah. I
So
like
make
that.
sure that you have a bigger, like it's more rewarding, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree. I think, and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking from the consultant's mindset, okay, great. That does mean we can shorten, how much time it takes us and we can take on another project sooner, or I'm like overlapping workloads and stuff. But you're also right that other folks could look at that and say, well, I don't need you as much then, or something. So yeah. No,
um,
I love the piece though of like use that week to add more value and
right.
bring it back to them, right? Yeah.
And be proactive, lead that, right? Don't wait
Yeah.
for them to kind of try and they don't have time to think about how they're going to utilize you, right?
Yes.
They got other teams they're trying to manage. They got other,
Yeah.
business issues going on. So if you can come back to them and just say, hey, we saved the week doing this and we invested that week doing that
Yeah.
X,
Yeah.
and we think this is going to have this sort of return because in that one-on-one I had with you, you identified these 3 pain points that you're dealing
Yeah.
with. And I think this research can solve that.
Yeah.
Bam. So
Bam. Totally. Like I was even just thinking for that project, the Design Leaders project, there a lot of times at the end of a discovery project, you don't have time to kind of do workshops and integrate the findings, right? But actually now it gives you more time, right? So that is something we were setting up, is to like work with each department to then bring the findings to make them more actionable. So thinking of the things that you don't usually have the luxury to do because you run
Hmm.
out of time, and then doing those too.
Yeah, all that research. Yeah, and if nobody's taking any action on it, it's
Exactly.
no good, right? But now you have
No
the
good.
time to go out and talk to all these stakeholder teams just in a brown bag or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Sarah, I really appreciate your time today being on the show. How does someone learn more about you, your new book, your thought leadership, and the work you and the team are doing at Outwitly?
Yeah, so you can definitely find us at outwitly.com. And actually, we are rebranding. So there's a new site coming in November, which will be exciting. But outwitly.com is there. And then you can also follow me on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/Sara Fortier, I guess. And for the book, so designresearchmastery.com is coming in the fall. And you can pre order it on Amazon in the UK. And but if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll get all the updates for the North American launch in the spring.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.